Hi, this is Marion from Wool Thread Paint. This tutorial is to show you how to do the simple join as you go technique for joining granny squares to each other. This particular square here is the centre square of the cherry blossom blanket pattern, and it is made in 3 rounds of one colour. This is the only square at this point where you would work complete 3 rounds. The other squares, the third round is where you're joining it to its neighbour, but as this particular square is the first one, it doesn't have a neighbour to join to, so this is completed in 3 rounds. You've got 2 rounds first of all of clusters of treble stitches, which is double crochet in US terms, and then the third round, which will be the joining round of the other squares, is done in half treble. And it's made up all 4 rounds and finished off. Now the next job is to attach the second square, and on the cherry blossom blanket it's another dark grey square which looks a little bit dull and uninteresting, but the whole point of the blanket is that it gets paler and brighter and brings in different shades of pinks as we go out towards the edge. So at this point we're working with the darkest colours. I'm going to join this square, which has been made up as far as the 2 rounds of treble clusters, and I'm going to be joining it with a very slightly lighter grey shade. It's almost imperceptible, but it is very slightly lighter, and I've joined it in one of the corners and I've chained 2. Now this is half treble stitch, so I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Start that one again. Yarn over, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. This is slightly more tricky than normal for me because I'm working through the camera rather than directly at my crochet, so it's a bit one step removed. We do a second one, and the first chain 2 is the equivalent of 1 half treble, so that's me got my first cluster of half trebles in this corner. Then I've got a space in the middle, so I'm going to put 3 half trebles in there. And then I'm at the next corner, and this time I'm going to do 3 half trebles and then stop. Now normally when you do an ordinary corner round a granny square you would do 3 stitches, chain 2 and 3 stitches. I'm going to forget about the chain 2 and I'm going to instead look for this corner on the first square, and I'm going to put my hook in that corner and pull the yarn through. As I say, please forgive me for being slightly cack-handed, it's just because I'm working through the camera. So I've pulled the yarn through and I'm going to pull it through the loop on the hook, and you can see that we've got the 2 squares attached with 1 slip stitch. Then I'm going to finish the corner on the second square. There we go. Now if I lay that down you can see what I've done. Now if I was simply going around this square I would continue by putting 3 half trebles in here, but as I'm doing that I want to make sure that it's attached to this square. So having made my 3 trebles in the corner of the second square, I'm going to find the first space that appears in this finished first square, and I'm going to pull through a slip stitch. Then I can find the centre hole, or centre space on the second square, and put in my 3 half trebles. Find the next space and slip stitch, and then I'm at the corner, so I put 3 half trebles in, and instead of putting in 2 chains, I'm going to look for the corner space on the first square and make a slip stitch. 3 half trebles to finish the corner, and you can see that I have now joined neatly along one side of this second square. It's now firmly attached to the first square. So all I need to do now is to rattle round and finish this square off with the third round. It's not touching any other squares at this point, so I can just work as normal. And because this bottom corner is what I call an open corner, in other words, unlike this, I'm not slip stitching into anything. I can just treat it as normal and put in 2 chains, finish off that corner, and then we just work along the bottom of the second square to where we started. So I've got 1, 2, 3 half trebles in that middle space, and then I'm back to the very first corner where I started. Now I had only put in 3 half trebles there, so I have to put 3 more in and then chain 2, and then I can just slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2 that you made and pull through. Oops, let's get that, there we go. That's it, and I can cut my yarn. Now if you look, you can see that we've got square number 1 and square number 2, and they are nice and firmly attached. So the next thing is to take the third square, and it's going to, because this round of squares is going to work all the way round this center one, so each square is going to be attached to the 3 sides of the center, at the same time attaching to the square it's immediately next to. This particular square has 2 colours, although they're almost imperceptible because again they're dark, but it's got a khaki centre and then a round of graphite. And this time I'm taking a slightly different colour as the joining colour. This is the walnut, the dark brown, and find the starter, that's it. Now we start in exactly the same way and attach the yarn and chain 2. Two more half trebles in that first corner because the chain 2 counts as the first half treble, and then 3 half trebles. I'm doing this fairly quickly because I want to get this to the point where we start the join. So I've completed one side of this third square. I've got half of the very first corner done and half of the second corner, and this is where I stop. And you can flip this round and put your hook in this corner. So if you think about it, I've worked along the bottom and now I'm going to work up here, back along and down. So I've flipped this here and into what is the bottom left corner of square number 2, I'm going to make my slip stitch. Again, apologies for the, that's it, right, and 1, 2, 3. So now we have got the third square attached in one corner, so we find the next space in that second square to slip stitch, and then we can put in 3 half trebles, and then there's another space to slip stitch into, and then 3 half trebles. At this point, you can see that we've got this corner and this corner. So we've got the corner of 2 squares that we have the possibility of working into to put the slip stitch. Now what I'm going to see you do is, instead of working into the corner of the second square, I'm going to slip stitch into the corner diagonally opposite, which happens to be the very first square. So put my slip stitch in there, and then I can continue this corner with 3 half trebles, and then 3 more half trebles down the side. And what I'm going to just rattle on and finish this and then come back, but before I leave you at this point, just want to say that this square, this corner here, is only attached in one place, and it's a bit flappy. So when you come to do the next square, which I'll show you, you'll join diagonally into it, and that makes a nice join in the middle. So I'll see you when I've finished this one and done the first side of my 1, 2, 3, 4th square. And here we have the third square completed all the way around with the dark brown in the half treble, and you can see how this half treble stitch really does make the squares nice and sharp edged. So that's me done my first 3. I have taken the chance to pop a stitch marker into the front of the very first square. That's really important, because when you're swinging around, especially if you stop and go for a cup of tea or something and come back, it can be quite difficult once you've worked a few rows to A, figure out which side you're supposed to be on, and B, figure out where the centre of the blanket is. So it's really important to put that stitch marker in. And I would also put one into where we put the first square of the round that goes around about the centre one, and then when you do the next round, put a stitch marker into the first one of it. And again, that helps to keep it clear in your mind which side of this ever expanding square you're working on. So we've got 2 stitch markers in. Now I've taken my next square, which happens to be 2 rounds of graphite, and this time its joining colour is grape, which is bringing in the biggest start of the pinky shades. And it's going to start, I've worked my first side in the half treble, and this one starts in the corner of the third square. So we're joining to the previous one each time. With 3 half trebles. And let me just mention, because I think this is the sticking point for quite a lot of people when they're trying to understand the concept behind simple join as you go. There's a hole or a space in the middle of this new square that you're joining, and a lot of people think that there should be a corresponding space on this square, but remember, this square has 3 rounds, whereas we're only working the 3rd round of this square. So in actual fact, there are 2 spaces along the side. I think that actually is one of the things that confuse people. So we've got a space here to make our slip stitch, and then 3 half trebles in the centre space on the new square, and then another space in this 3rd square to do the slip stitch. And now we're at the corner, so we put in our 3 half trebles, 3. Now we have 3 squares adjoining now, and if you'll remember when you did the dark brown one, you went diagonally across into the corner space to make your slip stitch, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go diagonally across and into this corner to make my slip stitch for this square, and then finish off the corner. And again, 2 spaces on the side of the square that we're joining to. So we put a slip stitch in one. We've got 1 space on this new square, so we put 3 half trebles. 3 and into slip stitch into the second space, and then we're at the corner again. So I think you should have the idea now on how to make the simple join as you go. I'll just finish this corner. So I've done 3 half trebles and then slip stitch into the corner and finish it off with 3 half trebles. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just sit round and finish this other side so that you can see what the 4 squares look like all joined to each other. So it's 3 half trebles, and then all we have to do is 3 half trebles and chain 2 in the first corner where you started, chain 2 and slip stitch to the top of the first chain 2. Make sure you pick up 2 loops and snip the yarn. And there we have it. If I turn it this way, you can see square number 1, square number 2, 3, 4, and then there will be one goes in here, and if I pick up one, this is a separate, this is not part of the pattern, but this little square would go here, and then there would be one here, one in the corner like that one there and one there, and that will be you completely all the way round the very first square. It'll be completely enclosed, and you'll have a square that's 9 by 9. Sorry, 9 squares, which is 3 by 3. The next round will be again exactly the same way, but if you imagine you have got this one completed here, you'll be starting your next round in joining this one here, and the chart shows you that in the pattern, and I would suggest you put a stitch marker into this one, and then you'll just work all the way around, and that will be the next stage finished. But anyway, that for the moment, this is simple join as you go, and I think you will agree that it does make just the most organic, neat join for granny squares. And once you get the hang of it, it's so simple and so easy to do and so effective. I wouldn't really choose anything else for joining granny squares. So that's simple join as you go. Bye for now.